Hey guys, back for another edition of Meteorology Lab. Just a couple minutes late here, but let's take a live look outside there. Clear skies, just not much going on here. Let's head to the maps here and see what's going on. This is the SPC mesoanalysis here, and we're showing, looks like a little bit of high pressure out in the Gulf. And we've got this westerly flow, so a little bit of downslope here in this part of Texas here. In any case, you can see the Gulf is definitely not open. Not much moisture. Starting to get maybe a little bit of that coming into the Brownsville area, but as you can see, that's kind of recycled moisture. Wow, that's way down there. Yeah, here's what I was trying to show you. A little bit of flow coming on shore there near Brownsville. So, kind of a quiet period here. Nationwide, we've got some MCS clusters moving through the eastern U.S. So one little line in the Palm Beach area down to, looks like around Key West, and the rest of it mostly offshore at this time. And then as we go northwest, we get more into the cold core type convection. But other than that, we're pretty dry here on the plains, and it will probably be a couple days before we are recharged for severe weather. Here's a 250 millibar chart for this morning. The dominant picture here is long wave troughing across this area here, pretty much on the east coast, from Hudson Bay straight southward. And embedded in that, we have smaller waves. So some forecasters will call these major short waves, but we can just go by the generic trough. So that's kind of what we got here. Next one coming in from British Columbia, that'll be down in the central U.S. area by about Friday, going into Saturday. Not much to show at 700 millibars. The shading corresponds to humidity. So you can see a little bit of a comma shape there to the pattern. And this gets back into the cold core stuff centered on Illinois and Indiana at this time. And then the more baroclinic flow, if you look at the solid lines, height, that's focused mostly on the Carolinas and Florida. So we're talking about this area right here. Then down at 850 millibars, this is probably a good time to look at the SPC chart. I like the Canadian maps because they're so detailed, but they just don't go far south enough. So I'll bring up the 850 chart. We'll see if we have the 0Z data. And looks like that is for last night. So we'll get this morning's chart. Don't have that either, so we're kind of in limbo here. Okay, there we go. There's this morning's 850 chart. So this is 500 millibars. This is up at about 5,000 feet. And the source of moisture, the Gulf, is mostly advecting moisture out over Florida into the Carolinas, and that's being gobbled up by those MCSs that are moving eastward through this area here. We see the dominant cyclone across Illinois and Indiana, bringing very dry conditions southward through the plains. And these are dew points, and we can see -1 dew point at Fort Worth. That's about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. 32-degree Fahrenheit dew points in Oklahoma City, and that's pretty much the case all the way up to the Dakotas. So very dry air giving us that scene that we have outside there. So let's check out what's happening aloft. Caught a bird in mid-flight there. Let's see. take a look at the SCU-T. It's good to look at charts on slow weather days because that helps you contrast them with the soundings that you'll see on a storm day. Let me check and see if we have the evening sounding up here real quick. I'm going to bump this up to 25 at 0Z, which was about an hour ago. And let's see if we can bring up a sounding for Fort Worth. And success, there it is. There's the Fort Worth sounding. So we see very steep lapse rate actually, from the surface up to about 6,000 feet. And what that tells us is we have a lot of modification of the air mass. We have this northwesterly flow bringing cool air in the 5 to 10,000 foot range. We're getting a lot of mixing. So some of the cold air moves down to the surface, some of it moves aloft. However, the air mass is dry, and there's those dry dew points right there. But pretty good flow aloft. We have 80, 90 knot winds up here. So we are kind of in a baroclinic regime here. Further up north, let's go toward the cold core system. We'll go to Lincoln. Let's see if we can bring that up there. There we go. There's the Lincoln sounding. So you can see the lower tropopause that we have in that area. What's happened to my cursor here? I'm trying to draw on this thing and it's not working. Let me see if I can restart that tool. Okay, I guess it's cooperating now. But there is a little bit of moisture in that column, enough for some higher relative humidities. And so we get a little bit of that cloud material in that column. And with the conditionally unstable lapse rates, that's enough to give us a little bit of elevated convection here and there throughout the region there. So we do have a few showers in that area. I don't know if that shows up on the... Yeah, so that's what we have there in the Illinois, Indiana area. Give me just a second here. Okay. Let's check out the satellite. This is the visible imagery looking off the east coast, and we can see the overshooting tops heading there into the darkness. So we're getting a little bit of flickering because of the buffering of these frames. And there we go. Let me speed this up just a little bit. And there you can see that area of thunderstorms passed through Florida earlier today. Moved offshore here this morning or this afternoon. You can see the tops right there. And back behind it, we have mostly a lot of debris cloud. So these are up at about 20 to 30,000 feet. And you really have to go further south of Melbourne into the Lake Okeechobee area to Palm Beach to really find any convection going on. So I'll probably bring up GR level 2 and we'll check out what's happening in that area. It's not going to be much, but I'll bring up the Miami radar here and we'll take a look at that. Okay, so we're loading up AMX, the Miami WSR 88D. And at first glance, I don't see any severe warnings, nothing like that. We've just got this one advisory here. Looks like a little marine warning for water spouts and winds 34 knots or greater. And there it is, just kind of a disorganized area of multi-cell thunderstorms. One stronger cell way off the coast here, and tops on these probably about 30,000, 35,000 at best there. So this is on its way out, passing through Miami, and you can see the outflow boundary pushing out ahead of the storms right there. And there's a closer look at that outflow boundary. See that they're very distinct, and that's a feature that we always look for, even in Texas, even in Oklahoma, Nebraska, because those boundaries are so critical. Not only do we get storms propagating along them, but we get storms initiating on the boundary sometimes. Here's spectrum width. Shows the boundary a little bit. And let me bring up the storm relative velocity. Yeah, that shows a little bit, but there's no scatterers out ahead of that line there. Sometimes you can find a very strong contrast between outbound velocities and inbound velocities along these boundaries. Okay. I was looking at the site list at all the available radars, and I noticed that we've got Guam here. I think we should take a look at a few of these sites. Let's see what's going on in Korea. I'm going to bring up Camp Humphreys. That's just south of Seoul. See if they got anything going on out there. Downloading the radar data. The time there, let's see, 01Z, it's going to be about 10 in the morning there. And yeah, looks like we got a little line of showers in North Korea heading towards, probably heading southeast towards the DMZ there. So, let's see here. Let's see what the tops on those cells are. Probably about 20,000 feet, very shallow. And there's the base velocity. And you see the zero line cutting right through here. So what does that zero line tell us? Well, remember, red is positive velocities, which means it's going away from the radar, and green means there's a component of motion toward the radar. So this is showing basically that we have westerly flow up at these cloud levels here. There's the zero line right there through the radar site. Got a slight S shape, and when we have an S shape, that tells us that there's a little bit of directional shear. So near the surface, what we have is southwesterly winds, and as we go higher, up to about 3,000 or 4,000 feet, we pick up more of a westerly flow. So even if you don't have the VAD VWP wind velocity profiles, you can definitely use this velocity picture to tell you what's going on. So I can tell you right now, here at about 1,300 feet, they've got 41 knots. West-southwest. And then on the other side, about 31 knots inbound. Pretty strong winds right off the surface there. So anyway, that's what's going on there in Korea. Back here in the U.S., here's the thickness pattern. Very unusual for this time of year. Everything is, this looks kind of like a November chart. The main thermal gradient is well to the south in the Florida and Gulf Coast area, so that's going to place the front kind of like that right there. And there's another section of the front up there near New England. And then back here we've got the occlusion, and this is the more of the cold core barotropic stuff. Look here in Texas, we got a bit of a warm front pushing through. So I might put that front right there, and that's something I would look for on the chart. So maybe overnight we might see a little bit of warm air advection taking place in the panhandles into western Kansas. And then up to the north we've got a very strong Pacific system moving south. And this is stronger. This is among one of the stronger fronts that I can ever recall seeing in that part of the country for this time of the year. Last night, this front was more up in this area right here. Ahead of that, we had temperatures in the 90s inland in this area here. And behind it, we had 30s and 40s. So that's pushed southward. So I think we should check that out on the surface chart. That looks like some exciting weather there. So I'm going to bring up digital atmosphere, and I'm going to plot a map that's a little bit further west. We'll take that out to maybe 110 degrees. Make the map just a little bit bigger here. Then I'll zoom that out to maybe about 1,900 miles. Okay, we'll give that a shot. Looks perfect. And I'll throw some interstates on there. Let me lock that geography on there in case we want to erase that. So there we go. There's our plot there for the Northwest. Step 2 is getting the data. So let's bring that in. Piece of cake there. So we're looking at 7 p.m., 7 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Pacific time here. And there are the plots. Very dynamic pattern here. Very, very interesting. So it looks to me like the leading edge. It's a little bit discontinuous because of the terrain. But I think we're looking at maybe something like this here. So up north of the front, we can see 70s, 60s, 50s all through this area. Very gusty northwest winds. And then to the south of that, we've got some very warm temperatures there in Nevada. Let's check that out there in Nevada. Warmest temperature I can find, I guess, Wendover, 81 degrees there, 81 at Battle Mountain, 82 at Winnemucca, and then we pick up 84 there near Lovelock. Then we go all the way down to Las Vegas. Look at that, 100 degrees at Las Vegas with 5-degree relative humidity. Very strong southwesterly winds through this area, 90 at Page. Wow, that's some very hot weather ahead of that next front, but that should be pulling southward tonight into tomorrow and should cool things down a little bit. But it is getting into summer, so warm weather is pretty much to be expected. Okay. For dynamics, I think one thing I'd like to do is use AWIPS. We haven't done that in a while. So here's the AWIPS display. Let me get this centered here. So 01Z, there's the current chart there. And we can see that the stronger dynamics are kind of split between the East Coast system and the Northwest system. And the stronger height gradient right down there along the coast, and that's supporting that front down in this area. And it also shows we don't have very much baroclinicity in the Ohio Valley, so definitely a cutoff occluded system there in Illinois and Indiana. So what's going to happen over the next few days? Not much, just the patterns progressing eastward. We do get this one good wave here. Let me back this up. That looks like it's in Arkansas right here, so we're going to have to keep an eye out for that in the southeast U.S. So here comes this wave, so watch what happens with that. We're up to midnight, and then 6 in the morning. It's starting to become a little bit more of a shortwave feature instead of a channel feature. And then by noon, pushing through the Savannah and Charleston area. So if the air mass there can recover, there might be a good chance for a line of showers or thunderstorms to move through that area of Georgia or South Carolina tomorrow. Okay, so that's the end of that. Okay, so we'll start getting into the forecast here. And let's see what we got going on in chat. We've got Ryan Toomey's here. Says, just went through a round of severe storms and blasting through Broward and Palm Beach County, Florida. We've got Andrew and Eddie here. Ryan saying that it was eye-opening, those storms. Rotation warnings around town. Michael Burrell, Will, Mick, and Ahmed, Alexi checking in. Sue M. was watching tornado videos on YouTube. Jarrell, 20-year anniversary. Wow, I can't believe it's been 20 years. I guess we should look at a retrospective of that with some of the weather data. Maybe tomorrow or on Friday. Jumping Flash is here. Ryan says several flights diverted this evening into Miami. Burl H. and Kevin McKinney. Jumping Flash saw a couple of Reno videos. Tornado warning west of Misty Selwards. Brett Dean reminds us to hit the like button, and I definitely appreciate that. Yes, absolutely. I'll like, comment, and subscribe, all that usual stuff. Ancient Astronaut saying 83 degrees at Canyon Lake. Central Ohio, I can't go into too much detail because there is so much to cover here. So all I can tell you, we're just going to have this cutoff system just kind of spinning around. I don't see much of a chance of severe weather for that, so you're just going to be seeing some rain and elevated showers, that kind of thing there. And Mike Dosh, that's a new name, and Dorothy Tornado. Okay. So let's check out the forecast here. There's our occluded system there in Indiana and Ohio. The main baroclinicity well to the south. Front there coming into the Jacksonville area, and probably the warm front up there near Norfolk. So we'll move this forward here. By the time we do the webcast tomorrow night, things should be pushing into Pennsylvania. So it looks like just more high base showers from Cleveland to Allentown, Scranton, and the cold front itself pushing offshore like that. So that's going to be out of the picture here. Lee Side Trough and thermal troughing developing in southeastern Colorado right there. Gulf is starting to open up tomorrow. So we'll see the dry line probably start coming together. There's that Canadian front moving south into the Denver and Great Basin area. And I think this is probably a good time to switch over to the dew point chart. So let me bring that up real quick. Dew point counts for a lot in severe weather forecasting, especially this time of year. Okay. Trying to get the window to cooperate here. And there we go, we're set. Okay, for tomorrow, it does look like we do scour out a lot of the moisture in the Carolinas and Georgia. So even though we have that shortwave moving across, it doesn't look like we have the moisture for deep convection. So maybe not a whole lot going on with that. Stronger moisture, that's going to be out near Miami and out in the Gulf Coast area. But some return moisture starting to come up tomorrow afternoon there along Interstate 35 in Texas. We have 60s coming northward. So by the time we do the webcast, we will have that dry line set up from Altus down to Mineral Wells and down to Junction, like that right there. So I can't really rule out a couple thunderstorms right along that dry line. It's all going to come down to what the SKUs show. Maybe I'll take a quick look at that and see what the forecast SKUs look like. Pretty high lapse rates, that's for sure. See that right there? And not much capping. However, the moisture is shallow. So that's going to be a big problem there. So I see a lot of ingredients here for dryline convection, but the moisture is just not deep enough. Let me show you another chart here. There's this chart here on Pivotal Weather called 850 and 925 dew point. Those charts are immensely helpful, and I'm going to bring those up here real quick. So the 925 dew point, this is going to be up at about 2,500 feet. So what happens tomorrow? Okay, we can definitely see 4 in the morning, we're starting to develop a low-level jet into the San Antonio-Austin area, but the better moisture is south of the Rio Grande. So by afternoon, here's 4 p.m. The 60s dew points are making it up to Austin, but we're stuck with 40s and 50s dew points there at 2,500 feet ahead of the dry line in Oklahoma and North Texas. But then if we go up to the 850 chart, just waiting for the frames to come up here. So what I see here on the initial chart for tonight, for midnight, the deeper moisture way down in Mexico, even south of Monterey. That's way off to the south there. So let's see. There we go. There's 4 p.m. So you can see there at 5,000 feet, only a very small sliver of 50s dew points, just west of Fort Worth to Stephenville. Everybody else, 30s and 40s dew points. So the moisture depth, this chart kind of confirms that that's a problem. And I would think the best chance for any convection would be just west of Fort Worth along Interstate 20 there. So I don't know, there could be some chase opportunities there tomorrow. So there's that 4 p.m. chart there. And then by 7 p.m., by the time we do the webcast, yeah, I guess we would be looking at maybe an outside chance of maybe a storm there between Abilene and Fort Worth. Okay. So moving that forward, we get more and more moisture come up overnight. The low-level jet will be in full force tomorrow night. Cyclogenesis up in the Oklahoma area. You can see a new front coming together right there. And then by Friday afternoon, looks like we have a stationary front up there in the Red River, up into the northern panhandle, and then dry line from a triple point near Wichita Falls, south to San Antonio. So the areas that I would look for on Friday, One would be the intersection of the moisture with the front, so southeastern Oklahoma. Another possibility along the dry line, and especially near the triple point there at Wichita Falls. And then the other area upslope. We can see some 50s dew points making its way up towards the Canadian and the Stratford area. But everything is going to come down to the details. So we're not going to know for sure probably until tomorrow. So the pattern for Saturday, continued front there in Oklahoma, another continuation of the dry line episode. So probably anywhere from Oklahoma City down to Wichita Falls. All of that under the gun for severe weather. Then on Sunday, the front makes some progress southward. So probably some thunderstorms anywhere from East Texas out to San Antonio. After that, it looks like the front gets a good push and moves down into Mississippi, the Gulf Coast area. So most of our severe weather chances will shift down to the Gulf Coast earlier next week. A little bit of return flow setting up for Wednesday and Thursday, and you can see most of it is upslope, and we're looking at easterly flow here in southwest Texas, so maybe the better chances for severe weather maybe along the Interstate 10 corridor there. So Wednesday, May 31st, some more of the moisture makes it further north, so it looks like maybe a dry line set up in this area here. And the bottom line is after that, the following weekend, looks like we have plenty of moisture, and you see lots of 70s dew points all the way up to Chicago, all the way up to Des Moines. So I think we are not going to really have much of a shortage of severe weather. And it's going to depend exactly on where the upper energy and the surface boundaries coincide. And that, in turn, can be determined by the MCSs, the squall lines, the overnight convection. Those will lay down boundaries and have some effect. So really, we don't know for sure exactly where the exact targets are going to be into the middle of next week and afterwards, but we do know that there's going to be lots of moisture working its way well to the north. So I think we will start to recover things a little bit. Okay, yeah, Jumping Flash asks if that's the GFS. Yeah, that's the GFS model there. And Mike Dosh asking about severe weather for Kansas and Oklahoma. We can take a quick look, I guess, at the NAM. Let's do that. Let's zoom in on Texas here. So instead of looking at a global model, we'll take a look at a mesoscale depiction here, and we'll watch the return flow. And as I've mentioned, the return flow is going to be pretty shallow initially. We see tomorrow here 60s dew points spreading into Texas, but the deeper moisture is going to be confined to this area right here south of San Antonio. So for Thursday afternoon, looks like dry line from about Woodward south to the Altus area to east of Abilene and down to the Ozona Sanderson area right there. Unfortunately, we don't have a depiction of dew points aloft, but I can probably bring up a forecast sounding for this area. I'll do that for 4 p.m., see what the air mass looks like. And let's see here. Looks like there is some moisture, and it looks like it may be a little bit deeper And wow, look at those lapse rates. That's very impressive there. Let me bring up a few more soundings here and just take a look at the distribution of moisture just off the surface. Yeah, I'm showing upper 50s dew points up at about 925, 900 millibars for this area. And that is going to be a little bit iffy, and you can see that the LFCs are pretty high, up over 10,000 feet here, so that's going to be a problem for sure. Let me bring up one more sounding here. LFC way up there at 12,000 feet. And let's see what the model goes for as far as initiation along that dry line. Okay, there's midnight, and then 6 in the morning, then noon. And looks like the model's not going for any initiation in this area. So it looks pretty tough there. Same situation on Saturday. 3 kilometer NAM not looking for any initiation along that dry line. I guess we're pretty much down to moisture problems going on here. But we'll see what the models look like for tomorrow. We do know that the moisture is surging northward, and the dry line is going to be out to the west. So it's going to depend on the details as we get into Thursday and Friday, how deep the moisture is and how well it's sampled down in this area here. So that's probably about as good as I can do for now, and that is pretty much the forecast there for the next few days. And anyway, I appreciate you all watching, and hopefully you can join us tomorrow. Take care and have a good evening, guys.